Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're working on our image editor, and today's topic is DAG visualization, part two. I guess this is our image editor. Let's quickly open them and give them a quick little peek. The idea of this guy is that he's supposed to be an image editor who works on kind of like a chain of operations, where operations are oftentimes OpenGL shaders that are like custom written by a user, right? The idea is like I'm in GIMP, I'm annoyed, I'm trying to like change the tint of some picture, and I can't find the fucking button to do it. And I know mathematically what I want. I just want to type the numbers and be like, move thing towards orange, and I can't do that easily. And so my thought was, well, it's kind of nice that I can just go in here. I can just write a shader called tint.glsl, and I could say, tint.glsl, could you work on Slurpee? And could I like change the color of this thing, right? And so we want to be able to replace like all GIMP usage. So we've been kind of playing around with this meme Slurpee banister, where we take Cersei Lannister, we put her on a banister, she holds a Slurpee, right? So current use of this guy is like we have this way to like cut stuff out. So we do a little cutout, and when we cut out Miss Lannister, what this makes is it makes a mask, and then that mask gets applied to the original picture here. Right, so we basically multiply those two things together, and this is just like a normal shader, so we could actually do any multiplication of two things, but we were multiplying the mask, right? Then we want to do the same thing for the Slurpee, right? So we create a new path and we cut the Slurpee out, and then we have like the same chain of operations for that guy. And then let's say if we want to put her on the banister, we make a new composition, which is like some way to merge multiple elements together. We put the banister in there, we throw what else am I looking for? The banister, we throw Miss Lannister, and we throw the Slurpee on there, and we can adjust these guys right as we need to, right? That's kind of the idea. Then when we can go back in time, back in time is strong here, but I want to make the Slurpee a little better. We find the part where we're doing the Slurpee cutout, we change the parameters of this thing, and then we go back, and those parameters have been applied here, right? So if we go in here and we kind of cut into this thing, we see that immediately applied here. That's kind of the expectation of this thing. And so what we're working on right now is that it's kind of hard for us to trace back. It gets a little unruly when you start having a large chain of operations. Trying to figure out where a specific change was made can get kind of hard. You have to open this flat list and look through it and find the exact thing you're looking for. In this case, it's not too bad, but it would be nice if we could see this as a chain, right? And so that's what we started working on yesterday. We kind of have it working where in the case where it's linear, this thing is working. We go, let's look at our dependency. We'll take the first dependency, draw it underneath us. And so that's what we're kind of seeing on the left here is we're seeing Miss Lannister to path to mask. But as soon as we get into this case where this is supposed to be two chains, it doesn't work anymore. And so we kind of drew an example of how we expect this thing to work. In this masked out thing, we have a mask that comes from some chain, and then that mask is applied to one of the images back in the chain. So what I want to see is a duplication here of okay, so the right side of this guy comes from this, and the left side comes from this. And so that's what I want to work on today is start by making the sideways, have multiple chains work together. And then probably I'll want it so that I can adjust properties of these things without changing contexts, right? So if I'm in if I add, where's my composition? I add this tint guy to this composition, right? In here, I might want to change the color of the tint of this guy, which I would right now have to do by clicking on here and going in here and adjusting the color, right? I would want to be able to maybe in this tree view, click him and directly apply the changes in this view without in this context. Then probably we're gonna need to do some sort of zoom and pan, because I think it's probably gonna be hard to identify what's going on in here. And then we'll just kind of see where we end up. We'll see where it goes. But at the very least, we should at least make the tree look not like shit. So that's step one. And let's jump into that. All right. All right. Let's do that. So I think that we were implementing all this stuff in treeview.zig. That's where this was living. And what we were doing was we were kind of creating a layout for this thing. So we were kind of like walking our tree of dependencies and writing down information about them, then trying to lay them out in the widget directly before rendering. So it's like we do a layout step, render step, and then as part of the layout we do some pre-processing to like walk the dependency tree once to figure out like how deep is it and like how many elements does each component have and stuff like that. I think we should think about this a little bit. Say we have like some root element and he has 3 children, right? Some of these children have like 2 children, right? 2 chains below. Like this guy and this guy have like sets of 2. But this guy only has a set of 1, right? I don't really know what I think this should look like. I guess like just looking at this, I would kind of expect these guys to be evenly spaced, right? Which means that like if this guy had 2 chains underneath him, right? It would look exactly the same at the top level versus like 1 chain below, right? Which means that I guess there's something about like you want to know like what width your parent was at, right? So like we walk down the tree, we start here and we go, at this point our width is 1. Then we look at our children, 1, 2, 3, and we go, okay, the width at this layer is now 3, right? That makes sense. Then I guess we go down a layer and immediately at this point, we look here and we see we have 2 children. I guess that means that we know that our width is 6 now, right? Because we know that like whether or not these guys have 1 or 2, they should behave the same. So I think it's something like we're taking our parent layer width and multiplying it by however many children we have. And what if one of the others has 3? Yeah. So say this guy has 3, then all of a sudden these guys should get fatter, and I think that this should be 9. I think if any of them have 3, then we should support having, we should like lay out as if we could have 9 in a row. I think. So multiplying by the parent width for our layer width, I think seems reasonable. I think when we're doing the layout step, we are going to need to know the layer width. Maybe? Let's think about this. So now, say we get to the end here, and we know that like, you know, in this chain, our total graph, like the width of our entire graph is going to be 6, no matter what, right? That means that like this guy has to be sized and positioned such that he's like in the center of 6 or something. Like, yeah, there's something about like it's I guess this guy's going to be centered no matter what, right? This one element, it's going to be completely centered. But his children are where they end up depends on something. Right? Cuz it like if the width was 3, these guys would be packed pretty close together, right? But because of the fact that the width is 6, these guys need more spacing between them to accommodate for their children, right? So I think that what probably happens is we take like the maximum width and we just space ourselves according to that. So we know that like this guy has to be between 1 and 2, this guy has to be between 3 and 4, and this guy has to be between 5 and 6. And then when we go down a layer, like this guy's width is now effectively dropped down to 2. And then these guys just get laid out in here. So we have to like kind of, I guess as we walk down the tree, we kind of like shrink in on the column. Okay. So I think that makes sense, which means that like as far as I can tell, we only need to remember the maximum. We only need to remember the maximum width. I think that makes sense. Okay. So let's see if we can trigger that to happen. So we said that we have to, at each layer, figure out our width. And then as we go down, we multiply by the parent width. So current depth and current width is something that we're going to be looking at as we're going down. Oopsies, this is the wrong thing. We're in pre-process step. In the pre-process step, current width. So on first call, where our current width is 0, right? On the first call, we have nothing. Then, I guess that means we have to count our children, which I don't know if we have the ability to do. I think that in order to count, we might just have to rip the iterator twice. Yeah, I don't think we have a really easy way to say, like, how many things do I depend on? So let's do this. We'll say count dependencies, count direct dependencies. And this is going to, I guess, just take in one of these like dependency iterators, and he's just literally going to count it. It's a little silly for now, but we'll live. Is this thing public? No, but we can make it public. Yeah, so this guy's going to be like, give me dependency object dependency iterator. Here we go. Give me one of these guys. And I'm just going to be like, I'll copy its current state. I guess just give me the object. Maybe that's a little bit nicer. And then here we just make a new dependency iterator. Which means that this guy needs object to be imported. Okay, while it next, we just say like ret plus equals 1 and return ret. Okay, and then we'll just put like a little fix me on here and be like, surely there's a better way. Right, surely, but this will do for now. So on each layer of our pre-process step, we're going to count our children, num direct dependencies is count direct dependencies. Okay. So say we are here, right? We're right here. We must have to come in with 1. No, we have to come in with 3 at this point. So the input of current width will be 3. And then we're going to get 2. Okay. So it just means that we say next width is num direct dependencies times current width. Right? That's what we've kind of said here. So then when we call into his child, we can call him with next width equals 6. Okay? And then I think that we just have to consider the 0 case. So when we come in with 0, well, if we just come in with 1, then we don't have to handle that at all. So we just come in with 1. Then at the end, we have to like bubble up the maximum value all the way up to the top. So we're going to have something come out of here, and we're going to say like output width here is going to be next width. And as he goes down, this number is going to get bigger. So here we're going to say output width is probably the maximum of the existing output width and what the child found the width was going to be at the bottom. And then we put output width here. And I think that's right. Maybe. We can find out. Because I think we're printing this somewhere. Preprocess here needs initial number 1 here. Which means that here I put this 1 in the wrong spot. Okay. Found object, so little dereference. This guy needs a usize in here so that he knows. This compiles, and so let's take a little look. And let's see if we get a reasonable width everywhere. Let us see. So width 0, that doesn't look good. Width. Okay, where does this come from? So yeah, we're doing something wrong here. So we're preprocessing here. We're taking so if num direct dependencies is 0, that does not work. So if we have no dependencies, we still have to at least multiply by 1. So I think that's probably what's happening here. Okay, so this is getting width 1 for a single image. That makes sense. We create a new path. This guy also has width 1, which makes sense. This guy has width 1. This guy has width 2. So that's a really good sign, is that like this mask generation here, width 2. So now what we should see is we have a composition, and we drag in this guy with width 2. So now our composition has width 2. That makes sense. And if we drag in another thing here, do we get width 4? We do. 6? Nice. Nice. And then if we go back and we find something, do we have any shaders that take 3 inputs? No. So it's hard to test that. But it seems like it's working as expected. It seems like. I actually realized yesterday our stream crashed. And I don't really know why. I want to just keep an eye on Radeon top and top, just to make sure that like if something is like ooming or like just allocating way too much memory, it's not a problem, because that shit like completely destroys the stream, which is annoying. Okay. So it looks like the width calculation's good. So what are we going to do with that? We're going to, as we do our layout, we are going to narrow in these columns as we get deeper down the tree, right? So we start with a column that's this wide, we get here, then we say it's now this wide. So on our layout section, you can be reunites the stream, it'll be more resistant to that. I think like what I usually find is like my GPU drivers just like shit the bed. Like if I allocate way too much GPU memory, like the compositor just like can't fucking keep up. It tries to like OpenGL allocate stuff and it's like, uh-oh, there's no fucking GPU memory. What am I gonna do? And like the killer on Linux also like fucking blows. So if I run out of heap memory, it also just like makes my system unusable. It's like fucking annoying. I need to find a better fix for it. I think I should just get a stream PC, to be honest. But yeah, it's not the stream that's the problem. It's literally like my whole computer just like I can't move the mouse. It's awful. It's awful. Okay. Yeah, so on preprocess or on layout, we start by saying that we are laying out make a sacrificial process with a boosted oom score so you get some wiggle room. Yeah, maybe. I've also seen that there's like you can like run things and with like C groups that like limit the memory used, which would at least help on the heap side. But yeah, I should do something about it. It's like fucking annoying. It pisses me off every day. I play games with my browser open, and then I just like go hold the fucking power button on the PC because like it's. I've never agreed with Oomkiller. Yeah, it's. I don't know what it's doing, man, but it's fine. It's fine. We'll live. We just have to be a little careful today. Okay, so we start with the preprocess width, right? On the first thing we hit, we're full column width. So current item width. Current call width in elms or something. We're gonna have to fix me just like I'm not going to know what current call width means in a month. Right? Like I guarantee I won't know what this means anymore. So we're gonna have to come back and make this stuff a little bit more readable. But for now, let's just like, we're in prototype mode. We're just trying to bang some shit out to see if it feels right. I guess our like width in pixels is going to be like, we're kind of scaling everything according to height right now. That's probably wrong. We're probably gonna want to clamp according to width at some point later as well. There's an API on SysFS where you can like subscribe to pressure notifications. Oh, that's a good idea as well. That is a good idea as well. Which I will look into off stream. You should not write comments. Your code should be self-explanatory. Well, I mean, this comment does make the code more self-explanatory. Okay, width pixels. So we're scaling everything according to height. That's wrong, but we'll fix it later. So we know that we have thumbnail height. This is a thing that we have. Our thumbnails are supposed to be 1 by 1. So this is something that we can use for now. That means that the width in pixels is going to be this times the column width, right? So this is the column width in pixels, where pixels is also probably the wrong unit once we start introducing pan and zoom. But again, fuck it, we'll figure that out later. So then we also need to add in the padding. So we have padding here. So this is going to be plus padding times current call width minus 1, right? I think that's what's going to be happening. So then I guess we center ourselves according to this. We're probably going to want to stay centered in the center of everything. Maybe. So we almost want like the column width as well as our center, right? Because we center here first, but then we're going to center here later. Center X pixels. Which, weirdly, I think we're working floating point units for now, which I think is wrong, but it's kind of where we are. So this is going to use, like, update is taking in probably the width of the frame. Yeah, so just, like, so many widths. Like, it's... we'll get there. Okay. So this is a U31, according to that. Maybe we'll leave this F32, because I think everything else is in F32s for now. So we'll do a float from int back here. Okay. So I guess that means that our layout is going to go in center XPX, no matter what. But the yes. And then as we go through our children, we are going to pick a center for each of these guys that depends on their index, right? So we're going to start knowing how many children we have is also probably important here. So calling this again is probably stupid, but whatever. We're going to call like nom dependencies is count direct dependencies. And I think that like how we space out is related to this, right? We're assuming that at each layer, we're giving even space. Yes. So next width is fixed for all children, I think. I think that's what we said. So the next width is like current call width over num dependencies. Yes. And then the center here must depend on its indexed. So I guess X start has to be like where we are minus the current call width over 2. And then we must increment that by some like multiplier of how far in the next column we are. Right? So it's like index times next width plus next x start. I think that makes sense, right? So we've kind of made like this width, and then we've calculated this border, and then we just like jump forwards by however many in we are. That's like a maybe. That's not like a won't work. Why is column width pix not used? Because we're supposed to use this. No. Maybe like this. In which case, why is column width pixels? Oh, here. It's supposed to go here. So when we calculate the x start, we're using the column width in pixels, but here we're using the column width in elements, which, I mean, seems fucking weird. Should we just use call width pix the whole way down? Question mark? But that is like a chance that does something sane once we solve all of the float from int issues. So this guy float from int, and then fix me cast hell you. In fact, we can just do this now. Current, like, num current call with f32. Okay, and we just need to also, like, oh, we already have this fix me. Yeah, this is just a bad name. I don't really know what a better name is yet, but... And we all know that this will never come back to bite me. The idea that I don't know what it means when I look at the word obviously will never be a problem. Right? Obviously. Incompatible types, usize and f32. What am I doing? Okay, so this is on this plus. So index is usize, next width is also usize, and then this is supposed to be center x pixels though. So next x stars in pixels. Index is this, next width. I feel like we should be working in pixels the whole way down. I think that makes everything makes more sense. Current width pixels. I think that makes everything way more reasonable. So we just do this calculation once at the top before we do initial layout. So this comes from like the pre-processed data num width. Padding is thumbnail height times layout pad. What do we call it? It's like level dist. Okay. If you say so. And then here we're going to have some like beautiful float from int bullshit probably. So width elms f32. I don't know, something like this. And then these can be like width elms f32 here and here. Oops. And then we pass in column width in pixels here. Oops. Yes. And why are there two things? Center X pix. Surely this width needs to use... Oh no, that seems right. Right, and then my center X is width over 2. There we go. Okay. That's like a maybe. So now this guy's got column in pixels all the way down, which means that here the next width is the current width over the num dependencies, but this has to be as a float, I guess. Okay, which makes this kind of make sense, I think. So we have the next width and our as f32 float from int, and we'll just put a fixed meaning cast hell. Ew, just like what are we doing? But it's fine. Okay, so that compiles. Let's see if it does something kind of sane. Okay, so we're hoping that when I start cutting this guy out, we see like a normal path. This is not good, right? This should be centered, right? So that's not good. Yeah, it looks like they're drifting to the left because our next x start is wrong here. So we need to like partition the next layer based off of the number of dependencies we have. Right? That makes sense. So oh, it's because this next x start, we're looking at the center, not the left edge. Right? So we're looking at center x minus the current width over 2. This gives us the left edge. This has to be plus next width over 2 to get us back into the center relative to that element. Okay. So let's run it again where we create a path out of something. Okay, that's looking good. And then we look at the mass. We have 3 guys here. Oh, that's looking pretty good. Except for the fact that it's really clamped. I guess that's because the total width here is way smaller than the width of the frame. So arguably, we should actually be like spacing these guys out more, right? Like we should maybe be using the available width instead of the like width if we were to try to space these guys perfectly. But maybe that's not too bad. I'd be interested to see what this looks like if we start running this. So we'll cut out Cersei and let's make our composition where we kind of drag this guy as well as this guy and this guy all in. I mean, that's looking kind of like what I want. The composition thumbnail is clearly fucking broken. I think we've got our aspect ratio correction backwards. Here, this guy's kind of like wrong somehow. It looks like it's correct here. So these are supposed to be using the same widget. I don't know what the fuck is going on there. But I mean, this tree view is pretty solid. I think adding support for multiple children, I think that's like maybe not done, but like that's kind of sane. I would love to maybe be able to like, okay, so if we were to try to use this right now, what is like the most important thing for us to get next? I think that pan and zoom is more important. Okay, I think clicking on these things and being able to adjust them based off click is actually more important because pan and zoom needs to help us like identify what each of these things are, right? And to like click on things that are a scope. But like the pan and zoom doesn't do anything for us until we can interact with these widgets in some way. So let's start with show properties of selected widget, where like the idea is that in this composition view, I want to be able to change the tint on something or something like that. So let's start there. Let's start there. Invert selection. I don't know what that means. Okay. So I guess let's do a little add -u, get commit -m, and so we'll say checkpoint tree layout. And okay, So let's start by thinking about what this is going to mean. So right now, our app has kind of like the concept of selected object, right? So we go into this guy and, you know, I have like each of these guys. Maybe if we show like the tint, this is a better example, right? So when I select one of these, their properties show up on the left here, right? And I can like go and adjust those properties. And this sidebar here is tied to the selected object, right? So when I click this, I'm like guaranteed to be seeing its information here. Now, in our case, what we want to add is I'm in a composition, I add this guy here. I want to be able to click on this and show the properties of that guy down here without changing to this, right? I want to keep looking at this while changing the properties of something else over here, which means that we need a like separation of those two concepts, right? We need it so that the sidebar has like a different selection ID, which is like fine. We can make that happen. And then when we click on these thumbnails over here, we want it so that the appropriate thing is done here. I think that makes sense. I don't understand. Do I want to fix this? This is fucking annoying. But I'll think of it later. We'll cover this later. Okay, sure. So step one here is that we need some sort of like UI action. We have like set selected object, and I guess we are just going to have like update sidebar selected object, update selected properties. Oh, that's a bad name. Maybe that's fine. Maybe it's fine. Update selected properties. Update property object. I think that's better. So we have selected object, which is like the overall like app selection. What am I looking at right now? And then this is like, what am I putting properties on? Sure. So when we, in our main loop, we're going to have update property object. And this guy's going to do something else. We'll just put it unreachable here for now. So somewhere, when we set the selected object, it like regenerates the set of widgets that are shown in the sidebar, because like each object has a different set of properties, right? Some are shaders with colors, some are shaders with like width sliders, some are like, I don't know, they just all are different. They're all different. And so somebody must be detecting that and regenerating the sidebar. So if the selected object, right, so here we have some selected object, and if that selected object changed, then we do this stuff. So really, I guess what we need to do is, this guy calls update object properties. Where does he get these properties from? He must be, and then what does notify object change do? When objects change, we reuse the same widgets, but users expect widgets to behave if they were new. Oh, so this is just telling the existing widgets to like go into their like fresh state. Sure. Okay, so like these guys are creating like lists of widgets. Yes. And they have like probably some like generic, they have object type. Okay, so we have like different for file system, composition, shader. Can we? So I see. This is making like the individual items for that object. That makes sense. So all of these are going into like removable content, probably. Yes. Okay, so I think what happens is that we have like some elements that are common to all object types and some that are not. So like, if I were to create like a drawing here, right? If we compare what is on the drawing properties view with the original image, this guy has name, width, height, object type, source, right? This guy, name, width, height, object type, source, object. So this, it starts to be different, but I think everything up until object type is always there. So can we look for like, yeah, here, object type. Oh, object type is generated every frame as well, but the stuff before that was not. So name, for example. So I think the sidebar has some like long-lived widgets that are retrieving the name of the selected object every frame. That must be what's happening. So when we create the sidebar somewhere, make sidebar, we're like feeding him. Okay, make suballoc factory, factory, full factory, removal factory. What's going on here? Sidebar stack, push widget, sidebar background. Okay, then we push a layout. We push the tree view on there. Then the properties view. Make object properties. This is where it belongs. Okay, and in here, we must be giving it a way to like retrieve the selected object name. Yes, retrieve selected object name from app. And I believe that everything where like every frame, this is like reaching out to the application saying what object is selected, what is its name. And I think we have to change this now to look for a UI selected object, right? This is now a different concept. The thing that we are looking at like being shown in the main viewport is not necessarily the thing that we want to show properties for, which means that this guy can't rely on the application. We need to look through every single one of these widgets and make fucking sure that it's pulling its data from the right spot, right? I think that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna start here on selected object name, and here we're gonna say you have the app, but you also have the ID of the object you want to look at? No. Not even. You want like a pointer to the ID, like the selected object ID? That feels like it might work. Right? So somewhere we're going to be updating what ID we care about. This guy's going to be like, yep, I'm going to be looking for that thing. Okay. And when he calls get, when he looks for the object name, he's going to instead look directly at the object structure. And he's going to be like, get me this ID. Okay. God, this is going to suck. Maybe. Maybe it's actually not so bad because the vast majority of things are going to be... No, this might suck. This might suck, but it's work that's got to be done. So we'll kind of blaze through it and see what happens. Okay, so this needs to be stored somewhere. Right? Like this thing is the selected object is going to like, I don't know, it's going to change over time. Which means that it needs like some stable address that we can like pull from and write to. So presumably when we create the sidebar, maybe this guy just like selected like property object ID here. We're just like, we're gonna like fucking allocate a thing at some point and like just go wild. Change it if you want. I think that's fair. Everything's single threaded, so there's no like concern about that. Yeah, fuck it. I don't see any reason why we can't do that. So that means that like when we make the sidebar off rip, we probably want to just be like, you know, make me one of these guys. Okay. What's he pissed about? I forgot a underscore here instead of a dash. And then this thing gets returned with this thing. I guess it living in the handle makes more sense. So this guy should go here. Okay. And then we have to pass this guy around to make object properties. Cool. Okay, so this we should see like svimp object ID. Okay. Now when we create the selected object name, we can pass in this thing that we have now. Okay. Do we compile? We do not, because this thing we need to dereference him. True. Okay, so that compiles. Now, this guy needs to be initialized to something sane. Right? I think that we assume that there will always be one object. But yeah, let's just do this for now. I think this will work. Or we could do like app objects ID iter next. I think this is kind of technically more correct. Even though I think these will be the same thing, I think that this will be more resilient to if we change this later. Expected. Oh, sir. So we have to do it like this, unfortunately. Var ID iter is like this. We get the iterator, and then we do ID iter.next because it needs to be variable. So we can't just chain it like that. All right, cool. So what we should see now is that when we switch objects the normal way, it shouldn't look right anymore, right? So we see Bannister here, and it's always Bannister. No matter what we do, it's always Bannister, which is good. That's kind of the change that we made. It's behaving the way we expect, which means that when we change the selected object, we have to also reset the UI selected object, right? So if we're changing the selected object, like at the top level, I think we should always reset the property object as well. That seems kind of reasonable. So can we do this? We set the property object ID to, app get selected object ID. Okay, so that should bring us back to the point where shit was working kind of reasonably, where when we switch objects, the name updates. But we should also be in the state now where we can now, if we start making some sort of like dependency chain, we should be able to start emitting events that ask the property object ID to change. So wherever the fuck we were, tree view, these widgets that it generates for thumbnails, we now want to wrap this in something that will like emit an event when we click on it. So let's think about this. We never update the widget, which might be causing the aspect ratio problems. So we should do that. So let's make our thumbnail this way. Okay. Then we make the interactable. Okay. So this gets a UI action. He's per frame allocation, I guess. What does this guy want? He wants an action for on click and on drag. So our click action is going to be selected property object is equal to the ID of this object. So I think it's just ID here. And then our drag item will be null. And then I think that we have some sort of like shared state that he wants. He does. So self-interactable shared, I guess, is probably where it's going to come from. And then we use this guy here. This guy also needs the widget that he's wrapping. So this is thumbnail here. And it's not called selected property object. It's called update property object. Update property object. And then we need to pass in the shared state required for that widget. So interactable shared is GUI interactable shared like this, and then that means that when we construct this guy, he needs one of those. So this comes from GUI share, like interactable shared state. Okay, and then we assign that here. Interactable shared is equal to interactable shared. All right, cool. Now somebody's going to yell at us for that thing not existing. So widget state interactable shared. Cool. Okay, and now when I run this, we should see that when I click on a thumbnail in the tree view, it tries to do something. So I click here, nothing. Probably we didn't hook up the input handling here. So I think that, yeah, we have no input handling on our tree. So I guess we just need to do that. So we look at this guy's API, we implement him here, like this. We have some missing imports, input state and input action. Oh, input response, my bad. Not bad. Cool. And then action here is predefined as our implementation of UI action. Okay, so how do we know where this thing is? We figure this out in render. We take the layout bounds and then offset it by the widget bounds. So I think that's fine. I don't think we need to make a function for that. So I guess we basically do what we were doing in render, to be honest. On input state, we literally just like rip the list of things that we've already laid out, we figure out where they live, and instead of rendering them, we call set input state. Now we have to be careful here because the input bounds here are going to be related to, we need to make sure that we like truncate them to the expected input bounds, right? So we kind of have like this idea where widgets are like really big, right? Sometimes, right? But you might have like a window that's smaller than this thing and with like a scroll bar, right? So the widget is going to be like this whole area, but the input bounds are this area, right? Because like we can't handle input on stuff that's outside the scroll view. So we need to make sure that we go do like input bounds calc intersection with the new bounds. So we make sure that like we can only shrink this guy essentially. This guy's going to like return some event that he tries to run. So this is like, we have some input response that's like default initialized. And here, I guess we just have to say like, widget response is this, and if widget response dot, I think we don't have focus to worry about here. So it's really just like ret dot action. If there's a widget response action, assign that to the return action. We only support one action at a time right now, so that's fine. If multiple people return, then like we'll just pick the one that happens to be later in the list. That shouldn't happen anyways. And then we return it. So now we should see something happen when we try to click on these guys. I think. Maybe. Maybe not. So new drawing, I click here. Nice. So we hit that unreachable that we left in main because we didn't know what we wanted to do here. So I guess what we're going to do is we're going to do this. Where we go, hey, sidebar, you got some shit to do. And I guess before we do that, we have to set the property object ID to this thing. And what we're hoping to see now is that we should see the name change. Nothing else. Nothing else, but we should see the name change when we jump between guys like this, right? So I go, give me a new drawing. I click here. I am not. I'm not seeing it change in either case. So I was hoping that when I click here, this guy would turn into Bannister, but that is not the case. So why not? Why not? Yeah, that's interesting. Let's see what ID we're getting here. New ID is this guy. Oh, it's because we're overriding him here like a dumbass. So on update object properties, we're kind of saying you have to be that guy. And okay, this is weird. I'm gonna do this for now and just say like this is set in update object properties unconditionally to be app I to be. No, we can't do it this way. This has to be a parameter. This has to be taken in here. And then this gets set like this. And then everywhere else where we call this guy, he has to be called with like the default. Oof. Fix me. This might be wrong. What about down here? Selected object ID. This might be wrong. I'm not really sure. Oh god, there's a lot of these. This is sketchy. Sketchy, sketchy, sketchy. But we'll live. We will come back. This one is definitely right. Okay. Another one here. So on initial sidebar creation, we want to do it like this. And I guess really, in reality, that means that this doesn't have to be set technically. But we might as well. And this is a better way to do this. All right. Let's see how that goes. Have you ever tried making this work with WebGL? It's on the list of things I plan to do at some point, but I don't think it's like super trivial right now. I think that I would basically have to stub out a OpenGL, like something that matches the OpenGL header. I know it's like doable. I just think it's like work. Hell yeah, dude. Look, we can see now that the name here is going drawing banister, drawing banister, drawing banister. So that means that this is working. Then I click here and it goes banister, Cersei, whatever. Yeah, that's looking promising. So now we just have to cover literally every single fucking widget. They all have to pull from the right spot now, which is annoying. But we will live. Okay, so let's start on where we make object properties. So the first thing is his name. That's fine. Delete selected object is sketchy. We need to be careful here. Delete selected object. Now needs to use the property list object ID, not app selection. Right? That's kind of what this is saying. But otherwise, the delete button is fine. Selected object width, these need to take the property object ID on both of these guys for the width and height, clearly. And we have to kind of follow the same behavior here, where instead of using the app selected object here, we need to do like, can we change, is selected dims used anywhere else but here? Probably not. So we can probably do like object dims here. And he's going to take in an ID of an object ID. And this is now going to use the ID here instead. And then here we just use object dims with self ID on both of these guys. Okay. Okay. Do you think a web UI might be better if it worked with a DOM instead of canvas? I guess there's like a chance there, huh? I haven't really thought about it. That's like an option for sure as well. But I think that would be way more work. So what would you have to do there? You would have to make it so like when you call render, you're like applying patches to the DOM instead of doing like OpenGL calls. That's like a possibility. I don't know if it would really I don't know how well it would work. But it's something to think about for sure. Okay. Object ID, and then this gets passed through here. Boom, 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 boom. All right, how are we looking? Okay, so there are other people using selected dims, so we'll put that back. Selected dims is using selected object ID, and we can actually call return object dims with self-selected object ID. And everyone else will be happy, hopefully. Okay. So why is this guy not happy? Did I just not compile? Did I not save? I need to dereference this pointer. True. I was thinking maybe using preactor for that, but I haven't used much. I don't know what that is. Are you abstracting your properties inspector away from what is selected in the main view to what is selected in the tree view? Yes, exactly. Exactly, that's what we're shooting for. No function named dims in vector. Oh yeah, this is just doing something else. I don't know why. Okay. So now we should be able to see like if I have two objects with different resolutions, which we can make if we do a composition and we pull in this guy here. So this guy's going to have a width of 1920 by 1080. This guy has a width of 1080 by 1350. So we are seeing at the very least these first three guys are doing the right thing. Okay, and then I think the rest of these guys are not long-lived. I think that covers all of the long-lived widgets. And now every time where we change the selected object, we call this update object properties thing. And this guy now has to do the same thing where he needs to like make all of his decisions based off of this instead. So selected object here, this needs to come from ID. Right? Cool. Then presumably we're going to start seeing things fall apart. Selected object.data here. This is fine. This is propagating correctly. File system source is using the file system object that came from selected object.data. So I expect to see that if we click on the file, if we create a composition now, and we drag in this guy, that's looking pretty good, right? So we're seeing that I click here, and he says banister.jpg. That's looking pretty good. Now I assume now if we go one layer deeper and we create like a path off this guy, and the path makes a mask and stuff, and then we maybe add that path, that mask here. Oops, can we make this from somewhere else? Interesting. Where's the dependency loop? Oh, here. Okay, so we drag this guy in here, and then I assume that if I start clicking on stuff in this view, shit's gonna start falling apart. So generated mask, that one's okay. Source object, yeah. So this is like doing the wrong thing. I'm surprised that this doesn't crash. That's kind of pleasant. I was kind of expecting worse, to be honest. Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. I was expecting some like heavy crashies here. Interesting. So selected object width here. This is in the composition. In the composition, okay, so say we have a composition that has this guy and another composition that depends on him. So here, if I go and change this composition resolution down to be like a square, this guy now, when I click on him, he is updating this resolution, but not the one where I can change it. So if I try to change this resolution, I'm actually changing the resolution of the currently selected one, not this one. So that makes sense. So we have two things to deal with here. There's like the input side and the output side. So this guy needs to take the ID in here. Self property object ID like this. We have to do this. So the selected object width didn't. Oh, this is to create a float 32, not a text object. So these are slightly different. Okay, so this guy gets the same treatment. He gets a pointer to an object ID. He stashes that guy here. Okay, and he uses him here. And it's object dims instead. Okay. We should probably just like take a look at all of these, because I presume that everything that's like trying to adapt some sort of UI component from like selected object, surely this is the same. Like, surely. Okay. So this guy's going to be taking in an ID here. Boom. He's going to pass it along here. And then this guy's going to be like, yo, bitch, you didn't save. So we need to do this here and here. Okay. These guys, I keep forgetting to dereference my pointers. It's a hard life around here. It's a hard life. Okay, so now what I expect to see is that the UI element is not updated. So here we take this guy, and then we have him depend on this guy. And so I'm expecting to see that like if I change this guy's resolution down like this, right? Then I go into here and I try to do it from this context. We're seeing that this guy's getting the right number here now. He's getting a 1255. But when I change this, it's changing the wrong element now. He's changing like the third element in the list, not the second element in the list. Right? So we need to change that. So all we have to do here is when we have this like update composition width and update composition height, it means that we get this UI action, and when we apply these things, we need to be applying them to not the selected height, but to some particular object, right? So this needs to be like update object height, width, and update object height, and they need to take in the ID. Which means that like it probably makes sense for these things to it would be kind of nice if they embedded the object ID in here, but that does make it harder to stitch together. Does make it a little hard. It would be like it's so much nicer. Update shader float. So how does this work? When I call update shader float, I attach extra data. I have like a generator. Yeah, I mean that is better. It is better. Fuck it. Fuck it, fine. So this guy's gonna be like a composition width and composition height. And he's going to be taking in like the ID of a object ID. I guess. And he is going to kind of just stash the ID in here. And now this guy, update composition width, is going to be like, all right, I'm for some specific object. Sure. And here is my value. And we're going to apply the same change to composition height. Yup. Yup. Okay. Which means that like we need to do the same thing for height here, where we have some sort of like generation object that the UI can call to make one of these things. Okay. And so now this guy's like, yo, bitch, this is the wrong thing. So we have params here. And update selected width is now no longer this thing. He's going to be update object width. And he's going to be taking in the ID of the object. Okay. And then what's this guy doing? He's like, my object is objects get at ID for both of these guys now. But otherwise, I think we're fine. So it's now params ID and params.val on both on these guys. And now these functions can't exist because they need to tie extra data to it, which means that this is like UI action. We need to make this thing public. We did composition width. UI action composition width. Nice. With ID is equal to ID. And we do the same thing down here for height. All right. Hell yeah. These guys are mad because he's not seeing a function generate. I see a function generate. No member function named. Oh, did I copy paste? I copy pasted wrong every time. I wish there was a better error message for that. Like, it's, yeah, you're right. It's not a member function, but like there is a function with the same name. And it's just I didn't put the right type as self. So like, okay, so what's our test? We make two compositions. The first one depends on the second one. And then now we click on this guy. We go back, so we're on like the third in the chain. We click the second in the chain, and we now see that like this is changing. Like in the sidebar here, we can see that this is changing the width of the second guy, not ourselves. Then we come here and we can change our width, and that behaves differently. Hell yeah. We're getting somewhere. This isn't too bad. It just means that like I think every single action that we can perform in the whole UI is like has to have this change applied to it. So I think that we've kind of proven the concept, and I think that the actual work here is just going to be like a lot of that, right? Just like looking at the thing, trying it, fixing it, making sure it's using the right ID. And I don't think that that's worth doing right now, right? I think that's just like a pain in the ass. So I think let's just get into some of like the more interesting work, and try to do like pan and zoom. So we'll say like work in progress, use property list ID object. Use like separate property object from app selection. Okay. Okay. So let's do some panning and zooming. Well, actually, can we fix let's fix the fix thumbnail aspect. That's been kind of bothering me. Let's start there. So, you know, we're seeing that like something is obviously fucked up. Like when I do make a composition, drag this guy in here, like whatever the fuck is happening here is like clearly wrong. This should look more like this, right? So I suspect. Well, let's look. Okay, thumbnail. How does he determine his aspect? When he renders, he just does render to clip transform of the widget bounds to the window bounds. Okay. Oh, true. So he's just filling the space that he's given unconditionally. But he sets his size such that it is not like he's expecting that he sets the size to be like the correct aspect ratio. within the available size. And we are probably just not respecting that. We're giving him too much space given what he asked for. So what we should be doing is we should be like, when we create the widget, we should be probably calling like update on this guy. So he has some available size, which is his like the bounds that we calculated. Or the size. We have like a size that's just like thumbnail width by thumbnail height. Or I guess thumbnail, like layout, thumbnail height. It's just this. We're saying we have some square that you're allowed to sit in, right? In from float, I guess. Okay. So now his size, he will like tell us a size that is like sane. So we're going to be like, surely the bounds must depend on the size as well that this guy claims to have. So we're going to do something like this. And then the other call to bounds, we're going to have to do the same thing. Okay. Now all we have to do is actually use this size to do something. So we're going to probably want to center him in this thing. So I think that we have a utility for that, actually. I think we have like GUI util center box in, oopsies, what the fuck did I just do? Center box in bounds. Right, so we have the size of the widget, and we have like the available bounds according to this. And so we just center our thing in that thing. And I think that's right. Like out area. I think that that should do what I want. I think that should fix it. But we will see. We will see. So we click on this guy, or we create a new composition. We drag this guy in. There we go. That looks way better. So we can see him kind of like moving around in the thumbnail there. And if I like stretch this guy, much better. And then I click on these, and that's still working as expected. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. We should probably highlight the selected one, but I'm not going to handle that right now. Well, can we? Can we? Maybe. I guess we could. We could. So let's make it so that when we put this guy in like a frame. So we have like this concept of a make colorable frame. So this guy's like, I'm going to add some space around the widget that you have in there, and I'm going to color it. And we're like, okay, sure, dude. That sounds cool. He's going to wrap some widget. So this is going to wrap the thumbnail. And he's got a color retriever and some shared states. So this is frame shared. And we're going to have some sort of way for him to detect if he's selected or not. So like frame color, and it's probably going to be based off of like the selected ID and the ID that we are working with right now, probably. So we're going to have like frame color. And it's probably like some like get color function that returns an optional color. I think that's what this thing is expecting. I don't remember, but we'll find out. And we said that he's going to hold the selected ID, which is a pointer to some selection. So this is, you know, an object ID pointer. And then the ID that we are expecting, which is a non-pointer. And we're going to say like, if these are the same, we return the color that we expect for selection. Otherwise, we return null. Which means that we need some color here. Which means that when we create this guy, we need to pass that along. And that kind of means, I guess, like this could be shared between all frame color instances. So we might want to think about that. Like both of these could be. These could be shared between all frame color instances, but we will, come back to that. And I guess now somebody's going to be like, yo, you forgot some stuff. This is unused, so our interactable now wraps the frame, not the thumbnail. He's going to be like, yo, you don't have selected ID, selected color, or frame shared, so we have to get those. Selected color is a GUI color. Selected ID is a pointer to the selected object ID. And then the frame shared is some sort of like reference to shared state associated with the frame. Which means that now somebody's gonna be like, yo, you didn't feed us those things that you want. So can we just be like, all right, fine. You want the stuff? We'll get the stuff. Okay, so then we pass the things along. And then that means that like he's gonna be like, yo, when you made me, you didn't give me the stuff I asked for. So it's bump property object ID. And then the color is like widget state, probably like GUI. There's like some like styling stuff here. Default color, I think, is probably the thing we want. And then we need the frame shared state. All right. I got the order of these arguments wrong. This guy's mad because I need to compare the value. True. Okay, and now let's see if we get like a little highlight around our guy. That'd be kind of hype. So we go like new composition. We add this and this. It's kind of working, except the thumbnail size is like, he's not taking into account like the frame border, which is a little annoying. So it's almost like we need the, when we create the thumbnail, we need to like shrink him a little bit. Somehow. Although I don't really understand why. Oh, because we're calling thumbnail update here instead of interactable update. So we need to update the widget that we care about, not just like some widget down the tree. It's a pretty good point. There we go. So now I create a composition, I throw a couple guys in there, and now I can select any of these, and that's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Hell yeah. Okay. So we fixed the thumbnail aspect. At some point, we added support for, we like visualize selected tree object. And now I guess it is pan and zoom a clock. All right. So let's make a test case that we know that we need this shit in, and then we can kind of play with it. So what was we had our like Slurpee banister test case. I guess it was like, not this one. Delete. We cut her out. New path. Bum. We cut out the Slurpee. New path. Bum. Right? It doesn't really matter. We created a composition out of the cut out the banister, the cutout Cersei, the cutout this thing, right? So we know that this stuff doesn't fit, right? So what we do here is we save this, and then we check that if we load save JSON, it should be in the same broken state. Should be. But we have to select, it doesn't save which object is selected, which is a little annoying, but fine, we can click one button. We'll live if we have to click one button. This is pretty hype. Oh, this is kind of interesting too. This is like a side effect of what we just did, but you see how when I click on this guy, 2 of these are fucking highlighted? That's kind of fucking sick. I didn't even mean to do that, but that makes a lot of sense, right? Because what's happening here is like this object is kind of included in the dependency tree twice, right? Because it is included as part of like the mask multiplication. We multiply this mask by the original object, and it's also part of like the mask generation, right? We use this object to generate the mask. So it's like kind of fucking sick. It just like happens to do what I like do a sane thing there. That's so cool. That's so cool. Okay, but yeah, we have this like state now where the zoom level of this needs to be changed. So what are we going to do here? Surely we're going to have to store some sort of zoom level, right? Surely. And, or maybe we start with pan first. Maybe that's a little nicer. So for pan, it's literally just like, we have this thing laid out, and I will add that to all of my bounds. So as I like lay out the widget, I'm going to just add the offset. Okay. So that's like here when we say like, when I render this thing, get me the widget, get me the bounds. Here it's like plus pan 0 or something, right? I kind of want these to be in like I32s. Okay. Uh-huh. So I think it makes sense now. We're tacking enough stuff onto this that I guess we just put all this stuff in here. So we say like bounds according to like the widget size and the widget bounds and the pan, which means that pan needs like a named type. I don't know like if we have like pixel offset, but you know, we can just make one here. Maybe this should live somewhere else. Should this live in GUIZig? I don't know, but now we can do pixel offset here. Okay. So now this like bounds function takes all this stuff. He doesn't have to do any like manual work here, but we have to, you know, put the stuff in here. So this guy's gonna have like widget bounds, like outer bounds, I guess is what we'll call this. And then we have the pan here. So this is a pixel offset. Okay. So I guess we take the centered thing and we say centered offset by outer bounds left plus pan x and outer bounds top plus pan y. Cool. So that should kind of cover this. There's another place where we call bounds on this guy. On set input state. We need the same thing to be applied here. And then now all we have to do is like detect middle click drags in here. So do we support middle down, middle up? We do. Okay. So we have middle press and middle release. Do we have middle? Sure. So I guess in here, we will check if we will like track the panning state. So here we'll say like if, you know, if the input bounds contains the mouse, mouse pause or something, and we have clicked the middle button this frame, mouse middle pressed. We say our state is equal, panning is true. Wow. If we release this frame, if input state mouse middle released, we're no longer panning, right? Surely. And then if we are panning, we need to accommodate for that in some way, right? So we need to look at like the last mouse position. So I think that actually keeping the like last data something, we need like some interframe data. I don't know what yet, but surely something. Like we're gonna be like calculating like how far we moved compared to the last frame, right? Or maybe where the pan started. Pan start is going to be I guess we're gonna have some pixel offset all the time. So I was storing like last mouse pause makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, so now this becomes panning is, you know, last mouse pause is input state mouse pause. This is sets it to null. And then if we're panning, we check like, you know, the x is increased by input state mouse pause minus pan state last mouse pause. X. We do the same for y. And then this gets taken by pointers, so we can say pan state last mouse pause is equal to input state mouse pause. That's like a maybe. I32 and F32, that's annoying. Int from float. Okay. That looks like it might compile. Looks like it. So now we should be able to like get in here and pan around. Oh, that's super sick. That's working great. Now on reset, we probably need to make sure that, oh, that's not good. I guess that makes sense. I should have seen that coming. So I guess in this scenario we like scissor. It's the only thing that makes sense. So on render we just say fucking go buck wild, but you know, we're going to like please OpenGL, please sir, please clamp us. So what are we gonna do here? We're gonna be like temp scissor set, and we need to set this in like OpenGL space. No, in pixel space, right? So we're looking at the left is the window bounds left. The bottom, these are inverted. So it's like, oh, it's widget bounds left, sorry. Widget bounds left. And so it's like window bounds bottom subtracted from subtracting window bounds bottom minus this. Yeah, I think so. Then it's widget bounds calc width and widget bounds calc height. So that should stop it from rendering off screen when we pan down like that. It feels like I have it backwards, huh? Window bounds minus window bounds? I'm just like a fucking dumb piece of shit. My bad? My bad? Much better. Okay, so that fixes that problem. We should probably reset this thing every time. So this is in like sidebar zig. When we call update object properties. I guess we call reset on the sidebar. Notify object change, self. Like, I guess we stash the tree view here. And then we can like tree view pan equals this, and then just put like a fix me. Clearly needs some API here, right? Clearly. But you know, we're in prototype mode. Prototype mode, we're allowed to take whatever fucking shortcuts we want. It's hype. It's hype. We just worry about the fallout later. This guy returns a widget. Fuck. That's okay, because widget has a reset function on it. So we'll just do the thing that we just said we wanted to do, because we do want to do it. And I think this is just like a void function. So reset here. This resets the pan state. We do need to get a pointer to ourselves. Boom, boom, boom. And then wherever the fuck we just did that hacky shit, we can just call like self tree view reset. And instead of him stashing a tree view, he stashes a GUI widget. Like this. Okay, that compiles. So now we should be able to like yoink him off the edge and then change widgets and then have him reset. Right, so we kind of like do like, whoop, and then we go, oh, over here now, yoink, over here now, yoink, over here now. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Cool. So that's pan down. And I guess next up is zoomies. Zoomies. So we're going to have a similar thing where it's like zoom is probably some like multiplier in some way. We're going to make it so that when we scroll in, so we're going to check if the mouse is over this widget. If it is, then scrolls apply to this guy. So input state dot one of these guys is going to be like frame scroll. Here we go. And then if this is like multiplicative, what did we discover when we did this before? It's like you want to do like an exponential here, I think. I think we have this actually probably already handled in here. Yeah. This sounds very familiar. We want, note that the amount is in range negative n to n. If we want the zoom adjustment to feel consistent, we need to change 4 to 8x to feel the same as 1 to 2x. This means that a multiplicative level feels better than an additive one. So make a function that needs to go from n to n to lower than 1, greater than 1. If we take this to extreme, we want negative infinity equals 0, infinity equals infinity, 1 is 0. True. X to the power of y provides this. I think it's actually 0 to 1, not 1 to 0, but sure. All right. I'm just going to copy paste this for now. And I guess without the comment and put like a big fix me to deduplicate. Deduplicate with input state in appsig. All right. Okay. So let's just check the zoom level here as we scroll on this thing. Fix Me committed 2 years ago. I actually have in some projects lints that like grep for Fix Me and don't let it happen. I am going to comb over this though. It seems unlikely to me that this will work. Okay, so this is, I believe, behaving kind of sane. It might be too aggressive. We might need to like dial it back a little bit, but it seems to be working how I would want it to. Okay. What next? What next? We have to actually do something with that zoom. So presumably, so who controls like size of widgets? This bounds function that we've been looking at surely is the guy, right? He's going to tell me the widget bounds, and those bounds are going to be, you know, adjusted to that zoom level. A nice feature for zoom is if it zooms to the pointer, not just the center, but that's probably for the future. I agree. I agree on both points. That it is better and it is for the future. So I guess all we do is we multiply the size of this guy by the zoom level. We kind of do layout in like the original widget space, and we just like let shit grow when we zoom in. That seems kind of reasonable. And then since we don't, the pan might be a problem. We might need to be, it's pretty easy to put. Well, yeah, you have to do like, you just have to do like a reverse transform to where the pointer was and then transform it back at the end, right? You have to just like offset, then zoom, then offset back. But I don't want to do it. It's like, it's enough work that I don't want to think about it right now. Okay, yeah, so we have the top and left of this thing. I guess we kind of, we know the pan of our viewport. We know the size of what? This is the widget size, which we should name appropriately. So do we have enough information from pan and zoom and what we have here? No, because we need like where our center is. Let me think for a second. Let me think for a second. So we have some box, right? This in this world is 0, 0. This is like some widget size. We want to zoom according to the center, probably, right? So we need to know, I guess, the size of this thing, or we store, instead of storing pan here, we could store center. We could store that and then we get it for free. But this is still not clear. This is like, yeah, I would call this like container size, I guess. Let's do that. Fuck it. We might as well. So everyone who calls bounds now takes like self. But how do we do this? It's like, Jesus Christ. Self get size context or something. Yeah, like this. Okay. So now we have, I guess this is just the widget bounds actually. That's fine. It's fine. When one more of these somewhere else, we call the same thing, where it's like the size of the containing widget, the whole area, the whole shebang. Okay, so now we just have to do something with this thing. So we have like widget center is container size width over 2. This is center X, this is center Y. Container center X, I should say. then you're already shrinking them based off the number of levels. Do you need to undo that and only do zoom? Yeah, likely. Very likely. Very likely there's no reason to do what we were doing before. Okay. So our center, like viewport center, is like the container center X plus pan X, I guess. These feel like bad names, but we will see it. And then, so if we're like, yo, I have widget bounds over here, and my center is here, it's literally just like we multiply each corner distance from center by the zoom level. So this is like, all of this stuff comes like down here. All of this. Maybe even after all this. So after the pan, it might just be like top is equal to panned top times so this is like in pixels. So this kind of sucks. This is why doing this in like pixels is kind of annoying. If this was in like OpenGL coordinate space, you could just like multiply the number, which would be like way easier. But that's not the case. So this might be like 0, right? And this might be like 50. And so we need to do like 50 plus 50 minus 0 times zoom. Plus 0 minus 50 times zoom. Right? I think that's what it is. So it's like container center Y plus container center Y, the like panned top minus this times the zoom. Gross. Gross, gross, gross. Oopsies. What am I fucking doing? Oh, there we go. Left, right, container, center X, and zoom. All right. That's like a maybe. Expected. Oh, because I forgot the zoom. I forgot it here as well. And here he's mad about incompatible types. This is, all right, well, U31, U31, I32, I32. So this is like, okay, fine. Apply, zoom. Fine. Fine. You want to be like that? We can be like that. Center, U31, I32, lock, I32, zoom, F32. So now this becomes like center plus location minus center times zoom. And then this is like returns a I32. Now we can do the casting shit as we need. So it's like center F is, you know, this guy. Lock F is this guy. Then we do center F plus lock F minus center F times zoom. And then we int from float this whole bad boy. Fine. Fine. Apply zoom with the center container, center Y, panned top, zoom. Ah, fine. Bottom, bottom, left, right. These guys get some X's, and left and right. Please, sir, let it be over. Okay. Files, what do you think the chances are that this works? I would guess not that high. Wow. Wait, actually, the pan now needs to be divided by the zoom level. Divide by, probably, times. If we're zoomed in, we need to pan farther than we're actually panning. No, less far. Less far. Pretty sure. I guess it'll become apparent pretty quick. Will become apparent pretty quick. Let's try the other way. We'll just try the other way and see, because that felt wrong too. Okay, I'm holding the center of the, okay, that's obviously wrong. I'm surprised that it's neither of these, to be honest. Maybe there's like some aspect ratio shit going on here. Oh. Or some like integer shenanigans. Yeah. So these are integers. So they're like stacking kind of weirdly. Once the zoom level's increased. Because the pan is in like units of original calculated pixels. Sure. So we'll just see what happens here if we do this. Fuck it. All right, maybe that helps. We like change. We use floating points. So we zoom in. I grab the center of the A, and it's kind of like jittery, which is not good. Maybe that's kind of bad, but at least like it's functional, right? So we can go back to this guy now. We do need to reset the zoom level as well when we call reset. We should probably try to set the initial zoom level so that like, you know, it doesn't like suck off rip. But now at the very least, I can like go over here and, ooh, that's not good. I don't like that when I click it resets. Which means that in our sidebar, we call like reset on this guy, and I don't want to do that all the time. So probably so when should this happen? When should we reset the tree view? It's clearly, it's like not if we're updating the property object. We do not want to do that here. But probably everywhere else we were calling this, we did. Which I guess is just here. Let's see if that feels a little better. Let's see if that feels a little better. So we open this, we go to this, we start like clicking on stuff. Yeah, I mean, that feels better. Yeah, I mean, that's not the end of the world. I don't really know how else you could improve this given like the constraints that we've set for ourselves, that this thing is like kind of small. Yeah, I mean, that's like okay. There should probably be a way to like manually reset. But that's a start. That's a start. I feel like something about this is not good enough, right? Like, show some arrows or lines. Yeah, I eventually. That's not really like my concern right now. My concern now is that like I can't fucking see anything, right? Like, it's everything's like so small that it kind of sucks. What I would expect when I click something is that would center. I think I wouldn't because like I hate when things move when I click. I hate when things like if I'm like doing this, I would hate for stuff to like jump around so that it makes it harder for me to identify. I wonder if like decreasing size as you get farther away from the top is better or something, or maybe just like yeah. I wonder if this would look better if each layer got smaller, right? Like you could imagine that like if you're at the top of this guy, like what I want to know, like the point of the tree view is to kind of like follow like I know that like let's say that we want to take like this Cersei Lannister thing and make her tinted, right? So we take the cutout of Cersei Lannister and we tint her, right? So we go Cersei Lannister. Oh god, is it this one? It's this one. Well, make her blue or purple or something. I don't know. Sure, right? And we add this to our composition here. Right? The point of this thing is if I'm like, okay, I see this like fucking purple Cersei Lannister on my screen. If I see this purple Cersei Lannister, I want to be able to be like, okay, well, I know that like I'm looking at the purple Cersei Lannister. There's like 3 things on my screen right now, right? So the purple Cersei Lannister is where I want to go, and then I'm like, okay, so now I want to like change like the pathing of this thing, and I can like follow down the tree where I think that comes from. So I can be like, okay, so then like this comes from this, comes from this, comes from this, and this is where I want to adjust the path, right? Or something like that, right? It kind of makes sense that like the things that are closer to you are bigger, and then as you kind of scroll down to the side you can zoom in as you care like about further and further levels of detail, right? I think that would make sense because like this is too small to mean anything, and I don't really think I want to allocate more space for this, right? Another option is you just make this bigger, you let this guy take up the full viewport or something like that, but I don't think I like that either. I do like the tree though. I will say, like, I can tell that this is going to be nice, right? The idea that I know, like, hierarchy, like, seeing the hierarchy, even though I have to memorize which image is which, is like very nice because that's way easier to identify than like trying to find in the flat list, right? I know Cersei, mask Cersei, path Cersei, right? That's very easy for me to jump to. Um, but yeah, I'll play around with this some more. I don't know. We'll see. I think we call it there for today. That's a good 2-hour chunk. I think that we've made a lot of good progress. It's pretty fucking sick, I will say. Like, I think that our coordinate systems are wrong. I think we did a lot of stuff wrong in this stream. There's a lot of like garbage code that we left around. But I will say it's super sick that I can just do this, right? Like, I might be like overstating how much I don't like some like graphics frameworks and stuff. But having like owning the whole stack and just like being able to just be like, I'm gonna put the pixels on the screen where I want the pixels on the screen and reuse the widgets that I already want, and I'm gonna like embed these widgets within some canvas. Like the fact that we can like scroll widgets around like this with like very little effort is very cool. I'm like very happy with that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think we call it there for now. It's looking pretty decent. Um, I think I might do a happy hour only stream tomorrow. I also might not stream tomorrow. We'll see how I feel. It depends on like where I want to go with this next. But thanks for watching, guys. If you like what you saw, we stream most days at around 12:30 Pacific time to 4 o'clock Pacific time. It is 4 o'clock Pacific time now, so anywhere between 3.5 hours ago and now if you're watching live. If you want to keep up on mainstream VODs, those are up on YouTube, so mainstream is kind of what you're seeing now. There's also happy hour VODs from the 12:30 to 2 segment where you have to catch them live. The difference is happy hour is kind of like researchy stuff, so what we were working on today was we were trying to decide, how much work is it if we wanted to give like an LLM a lobotomy in order to like win a game of connections. So we were like trying to like experiment with that. If you want to see that content and you don't catch it live, you have to subscribe on Patreon, Twitch, or YouTube. Please consider doing that. I know like the VOD access might not be that enticing, but I will say that this content will end someday, right? Because this is not competitive with software development salary in the slightest. Not even fucking close. Not even really close to being competitive with like, working at McDonald's, right? So this will end at some point, but the more money I make from this, the longer that it will live for, right? Because one day I'll be like, I need more money, but that day can be pushed a little farther with a little more income. So please consider supporting. There's also the option to support on GitHub as a GitHub sponsor. But that's, all the plug-in. I'm not going to beg for money more. Okay, so, I can call it there. YouTube, peace out. Twitch, let's find someone to raid.